Without further ado, allow me at this point to introduce Immaculata Sekua, who is a marketing expert with 25 years worth of experience. She also sits on the steering committee of the Shared Value Africa Initiative. Also going to be joined by Tiki Barnard, who's the CEO of the Africa Shared Value Initiative. And we're also going to have Jane Mwangi, the managing director at the KCB's Group Social Investment Arm, the KCB Foundation, back with us again this afternoon to maybe touch on some of the specifics of the work that KCB is doing. And it's certainly set to be an exciting and insightful masterclass as we wrap up our proceedings for the day. So without much further ado, allow me to call up onto the stage Tiki Barnard and Immaculata Sekua already with us on stage. And we also have Jane Mwangi who joins us as well. And from me, it's a big thank you to all of you who've participated, and my role ends here, and wish all of you the best in your deliberations from here onwards. All the best, and may we continue to make our inputs and insights with the passion that we've displayed over the last few days or so and earlier on this morning. Thank you.
Thank you for that kind introduction. Well, thank God men can fly and lay their waste in the sky as well as on earth. Those were the words of an American philosopher, Henry David Thoreau. He died at a tender age of 45 in 1862. What was humankind doing to our planet back then that still holds so much profound truth in our current context? Well, welcome everyone to this masterclass. My name is Immaculata Sekua. I am the head of Integrated Marketing Communication at Discovery, and I'm a shared value scholar and advocate. I hope that in the last 2 days, you've enjoyed rigorous debate and discussion, as well as learnings on the Shared Value Summit, which places a spotlight, obviously, on our continent, particularly at this time of COVID-19, where we are faced with many challenges that are wrapped around it, making shared value a very critical and urgent business strategy for the globe today. I'd like to thank Shift Impact, Tiki and her team, as well as the sponsors that have made this virtual summit possible. The first time that we gathered, 4th year in a row of the summit, but albeit virtually, connecting across the 54 African continents, and I'm sure in other parts of the world as well. This afternoon is going to be unpacking shared value at a level of purpose, and it's a level of why shared value is important as a business strategy that's been practiced by many organizations across the globe. I believe that the KCB team are joining us as well. Welcome as well as to everybody that's tuned in. I'm actually the co-pilot of this session. The real pilot is joining us on stage now. Tiki, welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to share this learning experience with you. And we hope that in the next 2 hours, we engage with you in robust debate and discussion around shared value. At a personal level, I came across the concept of shared value about a few years ago. Immediately, it had personal resonance for me. Being one of 8 children, I think, sharing was a non-negotiable in our household. But also at a personal level, I do believe that humankind is on earth to serve a purpose much bigger than themselves. And therefore, this topic really piqued my interest and got me thinking around studying even on the subject. As we progress with the masterclass, we're going to be interacting with a lot of business cases and case studies on the subject itself. Should we get the slides up? Right. At a very basic level, we do know that societies face multiple challenges, be them social, environmental, that impacts everybody around the globe, as it were. We also know that governments, NGOs, and NPOs aren't really equipped and lack enough resources and capacity to be solving these societal problems. It's arguably the private sector that has the muscle to be able to garner the energy and the strength to be able to transform people's lives by generating wealth, creating jobs, and ensuring that societies progress cohesively. And as it were, the Sustainable Goals actually have presented challenges that guide business on what problems to be solving around the world. We've also been guided by the founders of shared value as a business concept and as a philosophy, Professor Mark Kramer as well as Professor Michael Porter. And they've given us a definition of shared value. So let's unpack a little bit on what they've said. Shared value is policies and practices that enhance the competitiveness of a company while simultaneously advancing their economic and social conditions in the communities in which they operate. Quite a mouthful, quite a sentence full. Highlighting on their definition is this idea of policies and practices. What are we talking about? How many policies does your organization have? And are those policies shared value proof? There's recruitment policies, there's procurement policies. Now, in the advent of COVID, there's even work from home policies. How shared value proof are the policies that we have around gender, around remuneration gaps between male and female doing the same work in the same place? This part of the definition challenges all of us to be relooking our policies and practices in terms of what drives the daily decisions in an organization. Of course, both Michael Porter and Mark Kramer argue as well that when you practice shared value, you are fundamentally more competitive than what your competitors could be. So it's a competitive advantage strategy. How do you innovate in order to come up with products and services that your competitors would never even think possible? At a societal level, communities need successful businesses to provide jobs to them and to create wealth. And therefore, the cohesion of what society, government, and society and businesses need is a symbiotic relationship that enables shared value to thrive at a definition level. Here's some of the companies that have been listed, not a conclusive list if I may add, that have been admired by peers as practicing shared value as a business philosophy, all at varying degrees if I may add. Tiki, would you like to take a stab at perhaps unpacking what some of these organizations do? Yep. One of them is definitely my organization, so without really being biased about what Discovery is doing in this space, interestingly, as we're preparing for the Masterclass, we thought of maybe looking at these organizations through the lens of COVID-19 to see what they've done. And one quick example that I think I can call out, particularly insofar as Discovery is concerned, is a partnership that they engaged with, or that we engaged with Vodacom to provide virtual consults to all South Africans. I think at the time that there was a lot of uncertainty in a lot of doctor practices around flu-like symptoms, sore throat, and all the symptoms that were highlighted as potentially signaling that one could be infected with the virus. The partnership between Vodacom and Discovery through the doctor network enabled people to be able to do virtual consults with doctors on the phone to be able to know what they would do next in case they were infected. This partnership went as far and as broad as enabling close to 80,000 consultations to South Africans to a doctor network that they otherwise would never have access to.
I know. There's some really great examples on COVID-19. I mean, I can sit here the whole afternoon, but as you know, we're very pushed for time, Immaculata. So I want to share something with you that I even discussed with Mark Kramer as well, because it was something that wasn't very clear to me. So Johnson & Johnson in the States announced on the 30th of March that they'll start human trials in September. And they will provide the vaccine at a not-for-profit basis, and their share price jumped by 9%. So if you look at that, are they addressing a societal issue? Yes, they are going to address a societal issue, and then their share price jumped. Are they satisfying their shareholders? So for me, when I look at that from a COVID-19 perspective, it is corporate social responsibility that they've done. So I'm going a little bit off the topic here, am I not, Immaculata? So I want to come back though, but because I personally got 20% discount on my insurance during COVID-19 from, I don't know if am I allowed to name the organization?
Well, we're talking about shared value now, aren't we? So I guess you can give them a punt.
Yeah, so that was Sanlam. So my car is insured through Sanlam, and we know that during the Easter weekend even, there were 82% less accidents. So insurance companies must have saved a huge amount on these non-accidents during this period. So I got my 10% off. Safaricom's done a lot of things. We've discussed it. I mean, from that perspective, KCB has done a lot of things. I think with COVID-19, there's been so many organizations that have actually stepped up and took up their responsibility to assist with COVID-19.
And of course, some of these cases we are going to unpack as we progress with the masterclass. But truly and honestly, the argument that I think is put forward by the shared value founders is that organizations that adopt this as a business strategy are significantly more resilient, even at a time like this.
Absolutely.
So no surprising that some of the examples being cited have already started impacting ordinary citizens that are concerned about their livelihood, not only economically, but in terms of their well-being as well. So thank you for sharing those. Perhaps another topic that we need to tap into, and we've had a lot of debate around it, is this idea of the Sustainable Development Goals. We know that the UN came up with a 2030 strategy, and it's to enable us to transition out of poverty, but to also protect the planet. Talk to me about how organizations are embracing the SDGs just as a way of, for starters, a guidance framework, but also a way of perhaps defining their purpose around problems that they could be solving around the world.
So I think if we look at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, 16 of them are about social issues. So when you look at the concept of creating shared value, it is about addressing a societal issue through a business, through your core business. So when we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, we say to all the organizations, there are 16 goals there that you can address.
Yeah, there's a lot to choose from.
There's a lot to choose from. So look at the societal issue that's affecting your business. And then what you do is you take the 16 goals, because the thing is, what we also have to remember, it is not, one goal. If we look, for instance, at Discovery, addressing health issues, the ripple effect of that is enormous, because not only are they addressing health, it goes a lot further into the rest of the goals as well. And we always say is that shared value is that particular tool that you can use as an organization when you shift your strategy to one of creating economic value and value for society, that you have, and I always say, you have no excuse not to actually align to the Sustainable Development Goals, because we have a responsibility. 2030 is around the corner. We're 10 years away from it. So SDGs is very important. Again, I can talk for hours, but we're stressed for time.
I know, time's of the essence, and I think there's quite a lot to share. But what was profound for me as well is maybe perhaps in the opening remarks where Mark Kramer made reference to the fact that, yes, we know that COVID-19 has impacted us globally and we've never seen anything like it. And he referenced shared value as not being a crisis management strategy, but perhaps something that can inspire organizations, guide them in terms of a framework, and also help them identify opportunities of spaces where they could be playing. Right, so enough about the SDGs for now. I think when we speak about the rest of the cases, really, just the point to at the back of your mind, look out for the spaces that the organizations that are shared value driven are addressing insofar as the 17 SDGs is concerned. Another relationship that's proving critical in terms of shared value being a successful business model is a relationship between business, government, and society. And I think I alluded to it earlier on by suggesting that business requires productive employees that can come and be productive in their organization to generate revenue. Government needs to enable legislation such that business can operate freely. Society, of course, are the recipients of the employment that is offered, the enablement that government offers. But one can really operate without the other. And I think, Tiki, in the past, there's always been the challenge of the voice of government being heard when we discuss shared value. Do you think we're making progress in this regard?
I think for us as the Shared Value Africa Initiative, I have to be bluntly honest, is that we're still struggling to a certain extent and I think it's not just us. I think I speak sort of for our global community, really, when I look at our counterparts in the other countries. I think India's made real inroads because they work very closely with their government on shared value. But I think in the other areas, we're still struggling with that. We really made inroads in Kenya with government, which was really great. We're working with Rwanda government at the moment, but we're not where we want to be from a governmental perspective.
It was encouraging to see Minister Khadebe as part of the CEO lunch. So I think we are starting. We're getting somewhere. Right. Here's an interesting case of a government initiative, actually, that was driven purely from a government perspective, that just shows how that relationship can work coherently when business, society, as well as government work together. Take a look.
Now, if you're heading to the Pacific island of Palau, you'll be signing up to a new pledge.
Human impact on Earth's environment is one of the biggest challenges facing the world today. The small island nation of Palau was feeling these impacts acutely. Tourists were damaging reefs, littering oceans and poaching protected species, their careless behaviour magnified by large numbers. But how could a small local population with limited resources police the high volume of visitors? What if we made the tourists police themselves? Introducing the Palau Pledge, a first-of-its-kind immigration policy for good. All visitors now need to sign an environmental pledge to gain admittance into Palau. Stamped into the passport of international arrivals, the pledge is a formal promise to Palau's children.
Children of Palau,
I take this pledge
to preserve and protect your beautiful and unique island home.
To implement this policy, government, the tourist industry and citizens were brought together. A new visa entry stamp was designed and issued in multiple languages, and immigration processes were changed.
The joy that comes with the pledge is the recognition that, hey, I can make a difference.
But we didn't stop at the passport stamp. We redesigned the tourism experience via a website, an in-flight film, a passport insert, local education, business accreditation, signage, penalties, and collateral. Launched at the UN, the Palau Pledge has been praised by international leaders and groups. Influencers helped inspire people to take the pledge online in solidarity with Palau.
Are you already seeing tourists behaving differently?
The awareness level is very high.
The reaction on social media has been widespread.
The Palau Pledge has raised global awareness of the responsibility this generation has to the next. But its biggest impact is local, in Palau.
I hope my children can see the beautiful place as I see today.
Right, so a case in time of where government really took the lead to transform an entire country with respect to how tourism and tourists engage with it. Let's talk about the shared value framework. We've been given a guideline on how it is that we can create shared value within our organization. So while purpose talks to the why and the DNA of the organization and the raison d'etre, why an organization exists, shared value is the how. Michael Porter and Mark Kramer have put together a framework that helps us navigate this space. The three pillars that I guess define how shared value can be created is that, first of all, organizations have to reconceive their products and markets in such a way that they identify and fulfill the needs that exist within society. Secondly, their value chains have got to be redefined for responsible economic, social, and environmental practices. And by so doing, if you follow the first principle and the second principle of the framework, then you will find that in the environments within which you operate, you create local clusters that are developing and can sustain themselves beyond the organization's intervention even. I'm now going to just show you the examples of how, with this framework, some of the work comes to life. So just a caution to the wind on some of the cases we're going to see. Shared value isn't an initiative. It is the fiber, it is the oxygen of how the entire organization operates. So the cases are just illustrative to just show that in each of the pillars or in the framework itself, shared value can really come alive at a practical level in an organization. There's a case of IKEA and a case of Unilever where they've done some interesting work in India, and a case of Honda where they've transformed one of the cars on the assembly line to be a quieter diesel that emits less carbon footprint. And by so doing, all the three companies really revisiting their products to define what can be done at a shared value level in product design.
Hi, I'm Eldal, 32 years old. Although I have cerebral palsy, I do everything I can to conduct myself like everyone else. But in my own home, of all places, I'm surrounded with furniture crying out, cripple. I'd like to sit on a regular sofa without being afraid I won't be able to get up, to open a regular closet, or even to turn on a regular lamp.
1 in every 10 people in Israel is a disabled person. The IKEA design vision gave birth to the Disables Project. Smart hacks making IKEA's best-selling items accessible. The project was created in collaboration with 2 NGOs, Milbot and Access Israel, and started off in the IKEA store with a hackathon of product engineers and disabled people that enabled better understanding of their needs. In the end of the developing process, 13 new products were born, each solving a different accessibility issue, such as sofa elevating legs for easier ascending, lamp button enlargement, special handles for PAX closets, and more. The new products are presented in the world's first accessible living spaces in the IKEA stores. The new models are available for download from the project's website, disables.com, and 3D printing anywhere in the world. So that Eldar, Dina, Pavel, Inbal, Moshe, Tahel, and Liel can also feel comfortable in their own homes like everybody else.
Now they should come up with products that assemble themselves.
So the lengths and the depths that an organization can go into to transform the lives of people at a product level, fundamentally not creating a need, but fulfilling an existing need. Reference, because it's a little bit longish, and focus on the Unilever
Kids
case
love
for now.
to use their hands. Kids explore the world with their hands. In India, they use their hands for one more thing: eating. Not washing their hands with soap is one of the main causes for illnesses and dropouts. So, we gave shape to a simple idea: chalk sticks infused with soap. These worked just like regular chalk sticks, but at lunch break, they did more than just writing. The chalk powder turned into soap on its own. Kids' health will now be in good hands, their own.
Right. So hopefully that, and many other examples of corporates that are playing in the space, starts painting the picture of to what extent one can start looking at their current products and see how fulfilling the need of the community or society can start unleashing the power of shared value. The second pillar talks to redefining productivity in the value chain, and what best example to show than to talk about Doconomy, a fintech company that has completely transformed how business is conducted through saving carbon emissions.
In 2018, the United Nations released an urgent report emphasizing the need to cut carbon emissions in half by 2030 in order to avoid an irreversible climate crisis. The average consumer in Sweden causes around 10 tons of carbon emissions each year, of which 60% is linked to consumption. Later in 2018, Doconomy, a Swedish fintech, took on the challenge and launched Do, a mobile banking service for everyday climate action. The Do app is connected to a credit card that enables users to track and measure their carbon footprint from each purchase and to compensate for its impact day by day. This spring, Doconomy took its fight against climate change one step further by adding a premium credit card to its offer. But instead of introducing a premium credit card with the typical benefits that encourages further mass consumption, Doconomy did the opposite by launching Do Black, the world's first credit card with a carbon limit. Simply put, it's the first credit card ever to stop you from overspending, not based on your available funds, but rather on the levels of CO2 emissions caused by your consumption. Do Black helps you track your climate impact and ensures that you reduce it by 50% in line with the UN 2030 recommendation.
The core purpose of Do Black is not only the ability to measure the impact of your consumption, but also bringing it to a direct halt, making it a radical tool against climate change.
For years, credit cards have put a limit on our credit. Do Black puts a limit on our impact.
Now, the Do Black case interestingly addresses climate change as one of the SDGs. So once again, just linking the responsibility and the many problems that surround the world that companies can select to address at any given point in time. The third pillar really talks to developing local clusters. And Car Powership, which has addressed the challenges that were faced by a fishing community in Ghana, were addressed through this initiative. Take a look.
Gama is one of the biggest towns who do fishing in Ghana. So if we come here, you can see our canoes. That's what we use to look after our wives, children's schooling. The women who come and sell the fish too, they will store the fish in their freezers. When the doing so comes, our business gets rotten.
At the peak of the crisis, some people could go without lives for close to 48 hours. So it negatively affected people both economically and socially.
What we were able to do is to bring a very low-cost solution to Ghana, a floating power plant that can serve any electricity needs from short-term to long-term with the highest efficiencies in the most economic way and the fastest delivery times.
They say on the radio, the ship is coming. So we all line up at this area. It's big.
What we are able to achieve in Ghana is more than just supply of electricity. It's a partnership between the country, the people, us, and the utilities, making sure that all the community is benefiting from this project.
In this community, we have experienced light off when the ship arrived. Now, everybody's living very well.
Tiki, I know that we've been looking at developing local clusters, but overall the framework. Talk to us about Car Powership, because what they did was opportunistically at the right time, so profound that it had short and long-term effects on that community.
Yeah, so if we look at the Car Powership initiative, and I think when we go back, I have to mention that they were a Shared Value Award winner. So Car Powership, when you look at it, and from a cluster development, is that Car Powership could not enter Ghana on their own. So they had to work in partnership with government, they had to work in partnership with local communities, and that is how the Car Powership initiative could actually move into Ghana. They currently, I think, supply, last time I looked, about 15% of Ghana's electricity. They had to link up to the main grid line in Ghana. They work in different countries, other countries as well. So yes, the cluster development case study for Car Powership is very clear, because it was no ways that they could actually do it on their own. And I just want to add quickly is that there's no, and I often get asked that from a shared value perspective, is that there's no fit like a specific fit for shared value, because companies are different.
Yeah.
They have different ways of operating. They've got different people working for them. They've got different systems. So there's no one size fits all.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And I sometimes think people are looking for that from a shared value perspective. How do we do that? And yeah.
And on that topic, I guess the next discussion rightfully segues into this idea of when companies look at what they're doing, is it CSR or is it shared value? The debate has been had for the longest of time, but I think the argument that's been put on the table is quite clear that when companies take a percentage of their net profit after tax to invest in CSI, what happens in the year that profits don't roll in? And therefore, shared value just takes the strategy beyond what could perhaps be achieved in 1 year to a better sustainable ecosystem that enables business and society at the same time. So let's take a look at this.
Since 1958, the relief organization Miserior has been creating self-help initiatives for the third world. In the fight against poverty and injustice, every euro counts, and it's clear that even small donations can make a big difference, though very few people know this. The simple solution, the one thing that people always have with them, a credit card. Last year, over 40% of all payments in Europe were made with one. With this in mind, Miserior developed the Social Swipe, the first poster that accepts credit cards. The poster makes giving easier than ever before, and you can see the results. Your donation can provide daily bread for a family in Peru, or help an imprisoned Filipino child return to a normal life, all for just €2. These unique billboards were developed together with Stripe.com, a leader in innovative payment solutions. The posters initially attracted people's attention in international airports, but stayed with them long after. When donors received their credit card statement, they were asked to turn their one-off donation into a monthly donation. It's a small gesture that makes a big difference. The Social Swipe, making giving easier than ever before.
You have to admit that's a stroke of genius by Misio. CSI or shared value?
Corporate social investment, because it's a once-off. Shared value is long-term. And for me, it's a really great initiative, but it didn't really last for very long.
Yeah.
So we have to look from a long-term perspective. That's what shared value is about. There's no quick fix. There's no quick turnaround. There's no quick profits. You have to make the commitment, and it's a long-term commitment that you make, because that is
the long haul.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
The other argument, if maybe we dock on this idea of whether what you're doing is shared value versus CSI, is the ability of shared value to actually scale what you're doing to achieve a much more grander impact than what you would have had in a small little community. So scalability is obviously one of the things we should consider.
So listen, Immaculata,
we have to move on to the case study. Yes. Over to you, Tiki.
No, we're not onto the case study yet. You can still continue.
Are we continuing?
Okay. No, we can bring Jane up. Is Jane there? Because I want to introduce Jane. I know I can't see her, or she can't. There she is. Hello, Jane. Okay. So we've got Jane Mwangi back again from KCB, and we all heard, she touched on it a little bit this morning on what they're doing with Tujiajiri. And I have to say in the beginning, I had to get used to the pronunciation, Jane, Tujiajiri, and now I'm quite good at it, eh? So it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Jane and the Tujiajiri case study that we'll talk a little bit about afterwards. Jane is a very special person in our lives. She's very much part of the shared value community. KCB is one of our new recruits. They joined our community to become one of our members, which is even more important. But they've been a purpose-led organization for so long, and that's why Tujiajiri is really flourishing, within the East Africa community. So Jane, we're going to hand over to you to do your presentation while we watch in the background, and then we will take some Q&A afterwards if people want to, pose some questions to Jane. Over to Jane. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tiki, and a great congratulations first to you for putting this summit together. Putting a global summit virtually is not an easy task, but you've done it very, very well. And thank you so much for you and Immaculate for setting stage for me, and especially for what it is that I'm going to talk about. And I think if, as I went to see the presentation up, let's say that KCB Group and KCB also as a foundation, because the foundation is part of the group. We are so much committed to the shared value whole concept. And especially because, just like you have said, it is so much the future. And it is not about a hit and run, but it's about solving a problem. For us, we take shared value as that journey of looking for solutions for communities and societies, solving the problems for the purposes of providing long-term profitability for businesses. And so, yes, it is a practice for us, and a practice that is part and parcel of everything that we do. The foundation is a social arm of the bank, and about 13 years in age. When we started the foundation 13 years ago, it focused so much on relief. And relief, philanthropy is what it is. There is a place for it. It was really called so much of, a corporate responsibility. But with time, we started realizing that relief will not be able to solve a problem. It's a hit and run. It's short term. And so we started reorganizing all our work and saying that there is a need and purpose for every activity that we do. And so, in large, the foundation organizes itself into three buckets. All our activities are in three buckets. There is a bucket for philanthropy because there's still space for philanthropy. Moments such as this with the COVID, we must be able to respond to communities, and the solutions we are giving at this point in time is so much humanitarian, and that is, philanthropy. Then we have just the general corporate social responsibility, still has its own space in terms of complying to regulation, just compliance as it is, it's a responsibility. But then we have the shared value, and shared value for us takes about 85% of all our resources and all our efforts. And we have put our efforts there because we are saying that much as we want to, engage with the communities, we want to ensure that we are not just giving short-term relief. We are not just doing, short-term solutions to problems, but we are really taking our time to study a problem, get to know the nuances of a problem, get to have proper interventions, design interventions that fully speak to the problem. But at the end of the day, the solution we provide is what creates long-term profitability for businesses. And also the solutions we provide to societal problems are solutions that are both scalable and sustainable, much to exactly what it is. You have had that conversation so well with Immaculate. And so next slide. If we go to the next slide. All right. And so the programs that we have Mifugo ni Mali, that is a program that seeks to work with livestock farmers in the Asal area. We have a scholarship program that seeks to address the needs of bright young students, but very, very needy students, and also to Jiajiri, the one that you've just mentioned. I'm glad you're able to mention it, Tiki. That's a program where we really start looking at the issues of youth unemployment in the country and beginning to say, let's have the courage to solve a problem. And so therefore, these three programs that you're talking about, all of them, they are really anchored on the shared value concept. and really saying in all of them, they are not short-term, they are long-term, they may take long, but they give us a sustainable solution and a scalable solution. And so if I just delve into tujiajiri is a Swahili word for let us self-employ. And what inspired us to do tujiajiri is really looking at the bank and telling the bank, we are in this business, and for 128 years, we've been great and successful. But when you look at the continent at large, that is Africa, you look at East Africa, where we really operate in, you even look at Kenya as a country, 70%, closely to 70% of the population is so much 35 and under. And we are really basically saying we are just a continent full of young people. But all these young people are so much jobless. And so saying, if 70% of the population is not economic citizens and they probably have no opportunity to participate in economies because they have no jobs, then what are we saying as a bank? Who are we going to be banking 20 years down the road? And with that challenge, when we tabled that challenge to the bank, we say that if we start to intentionally solve the youth unemployment problem in the country now, then 20 years down the road, we should be able to continue doing business and thriving as a business. And so Tujiajiri therefore seeks to help young people create their own jobs and to also create their own wealth. And they're really saying that they will do it systematically. And we say that in doing it and in tackling the problem, we said, let's first look at who is hiring in the country, who is creating jobs. And we realize that the informal sector is the one that is creating jobs. And I will delve into that in the next slide. The next slide, first, what you see is Tujiajiri really being at the center of the group, KCB group business interest. That is long-term profitability, of course, long-term growth as a business, and the community needs. And the community needs here, we are looking at youth unemployment. And we are therefore saying that the nexus of development and business is always the home of shared value. That sweet spot where both business and development are able to, to merge or to intersect, then we are able to do our business. We are able to design programs that speak to the communities. So youth unemployment offers a big opportunity to the group to provide endurable solutions that have inbuilt long-term profitability. And that is exactly what Tujiajiri seeks to do. And so what's a problem statement? I think we can go to the next slide. And as we looked at the problem statement, we say who is hiring? It's the informal sector that is hiring. It's the informal sector that creates almost over 80% of the jobs. But the informal sector itself has so many problems. And the first problem of informal sector is just lack of technical skill. Oftentimes when you look at a lot of the jobs or the small micro enterprises out there, people doing a lot of things. You're walking into an automotive garage and you're looking at mechanics and you're wondering, are they technically sound? Because if they're not technically sound and they've been practicing, the day you will take a vehicle to them that is a little complex, they will hit a snag. And instead of solving the problem, they will shut the garage because most probably they have goofed, they have messed up with the car, they don't know what to do. And it's all because they were not technically sound. And so the first challenge we identified was lack of technical skill. But even if they were technically sound, lack of access to credit, access to finance. And for us, this access to finance is not once again bits and pieces. But ideally, it's saying, let's look at access to finance holistically. These small informal businesses, they need startup capital, they need working capital, and they need tools of trade. Because if you give them one and not all of them together, once again, you limit their growth and you limit the extent to which they're able to maximize their profits. And so we looked at that holistically as a whole package. As a matter of fact, when we looked at it also, we realized that there was also need to do some blended financing. Blended financing for us is where you're blending debt, financing, and equity and grants where need be. And then the third problem we identified was just lack of formal markets. And if you followed the conversation of the day, that was very, very brilliant. I did enjoy so much listening to the young people from all over Africa, from Nigeria, from Rwanda, from Kenya, from Ghana. And the thread was the same. The message was the same. The challenges are the same. Wherever is happening in Ghana is what is happening in Kenya with the informal businesses, the struggles of the young people who have gotten into the spaces of trying to do business, but they have all these challenges like lack of formal market. And I was also very delighted to hear the African free trade conversation. They too also spoke so much about that lack of formal markets and the need for us to be intentional about creating those markets. And so oftentimes you see those micro businesses, everybody's doing whatever they want to do, they're struggling, they're hustling, but it's not as though they have any formal market that they're responding to. It is just try and error, but with no much formality to it. And then, of course, the last one and most critical is lack of managerial and entrepreneurial support. And this basically is where we are saying that if you look at the corporate, and I think I alluded to this morning in the keynote conversation, where really we are saying that big corporates are able to survive and to thrive because they can be able to afford to recruit or to contract the likes of PwC, KPMG, Deloitte to come and help them do some work that they're not an expert in. But the same services that corporates enjoy, small micro informal businesses should also be able to enjoy, and they need the same services, but they cannot enjoy all those services because they have no finances. And because they don't have, the ability to engage in that space or to contract those services, they struggle and they will try and run a business they themselves, try and do their own bookkeeping, never mind that they'll not be able to differentiate between revenue and profits. And so they will, spend money thinking that they're profit, and all the while, it was all about revenue. And so really the need for us to therefore provide them with the managerial, entrepreneurial support. The next slide then gives us our proposed solution as to Jiajiri program. And once again, as we are saying, truly shared value is not a short stay. It's for a long, it's a marathon. And that's why even the solutions and the shared value are very holistic and very compact and very expensive as well. And that's why they also are enduring solutions. But with that investment, therefore, you can expect a return, a long-term profitability. And so on the upper part of the presentation, what you see are the solutions, therefore provision of technical skill. And in provision of technical skill, what we have done under Jiajiri, we have taken the young people and we have given them scholarships to go to vocational school. And in taking them to vocational schools, we target between 3 to 6 months. They can go beyond 6 months, but it's where we say we want to jumpstart them, give them the ability to go back to class, take a course. If they are able to take themselves further, to a diploma and a degree, so be it, but we help them to start. After giving them the technical skill, therefore, we now also give them access to credit. And that is provision of finance. Once again, as I say, our finance does not come as a single lane finance, but is a whole compact, holistic approach. We therefore give them startup capital, working capital, asset financing. Those are the tools of trade. so that they are really able to be able, they're really able to start off wherever they, the business they want to get into. Then we intentionally provide them with market linkage. As much as possible, as a matter of fact, we start with the market and we work backward. We have the big privilege of being able to do market linkage, because when you really think about a bank of our magnitude in all, 7 countries within the region, we are literally banking almost everybody in the market. And so because we bank the market, it is very easy for us as a foundation to sit with the corporate arm of the bank and ask them to hook us up with the market. And all the while for us, as we are doing that, we are doing it on behalf of the young people. For example, if you're going to train the young people on in agriculture, production of vegetables, we are able to negotiate opportunities for them at the supermarkets. And then definitely the next other thing that is so critical is provision of business development support. Remember, we said they cannot be able to afford hiring the KPMGs and the Deloitte. But then again, we are saying, who is KPMG, who is Deloitte? Who are all these consulting firms that we all see and enjoy working with so much as corporates? They are really a composition, they're composed of all the professionals such as marketers, accountants, lawyers, agronomists, and all that, engineers. But all these professionals are so much our young people, our young graduates who have gone ahead and graduated, but they're sitting at home idle because there are no jobs. And so essentially what it is we have done is to take those young people, the professionals who have graduated, and we are helping them become the consultants. And essentially we are telling them, we will train you as consultants, we shall put you on payroll, you will not necessarily consult for the big guys like the KCB corporates, but you'll consult for all these small businesses that we are setting up. And as you consult for them, if you do a good job, when the program ends, they should be able to retain you, because now they themselves as businesses, they have, thrived and are growing. And so down there, the lower part of it is exactly what it is I've spoken about. We will, we continue giving the business, we give them the loans, we incubate them for a period of 12 months to 36 months, depending on how long the loan is. And we are then able to also give them growth. And if you go to the next slide, and I know that I'm running out of time and I will be very fast in the next slides. Every good development program must have a hypothesis. And our development hypothesis, or what we call our theory of change, is that if we skill the young people, give them access to finance, as I have said, give them financial literacy, and enhance their enterprises and incubate their businesses, give them deliberate market linkages, then we should be able to see a creation of economic wealth. We should be able to formalize the informal businesses. We should be able to create those enduring solutions that will be able to create jobs for the young people. And if we create jobs for them, we help them grow their wealth, we should be able then to bank their wealth. And in banking that wealth, that's what we call profitability for the bank. And then the next slide, if I quickly run through it, is really just an implementation sequencing of the Tujiajiri program. Stage 1 is what I spoke about, that's training, where we take them to vocational school. Stage 2 is incubation, incubating them for 12 to 36 months. And stage 3 is where we now exit as a foundation, and in every sense, we pass them back over to the bank. And in passing them over to the bank, essentially what we say is loan number 1 came from the foundation in the safe space of the foundation, where we are, we have the blended financing. Occasionally we use the grants, we use the equity, we use debt. But loan number 2, they go to the bank, and in every sense, the bank is able now to scale them and sustain them. And if you can take me to the next. The next slide tells us the areas in which, the sectors in which we have focused in. We focus on automotive industry. We focus on construction, beauty and personal care, hospitality, agribusiness, and ICT. And really, when you look at all these areas I've spoken about, these are the low-hanging fruit, the places where we have seen great opportunities that lend themselves as an obvious opportunity for young people to create jobs. And it's young people of all walks of life. It's really from your high school dropout, your primary dropout, all the way to your university graduate. Within all those 6 categories, they're able to fit. And the next slides really are so much photographs of the work that we are doing. If you visit our website, you see a lot more. We are not only doing it in Kenya, we are doing it in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi. We shall be going to Burundi soon, and South Sudan. And right there you see, that's a stage 1. They're in class. That's vocational training, that's carpentry. The next stage, if you take me to the next slide, that's the incubation. This is what it is we said. We help them. And incubation is very important because when you give them the lawyer, the accountant, and the marketer, the 3, or we call them trios, are not training them, but they are doing. Is exactly what your consulting firm does. And so they help them do audits, books of accounts, business strategies. They, license the businesses. They register the businesses. The marketing guys help them do the branding and really bringing the 4 P's of marketing to bear. And then the next slide is where we say, if you can take me next, yeah. So far, since inception in 2016, we have done over 37,000. We have trained them, and we have disbursed loans of over 5 million. I know we have set aside about $200 million that we shall soon, over the next 5 years, be disbursing, especially on a program that we have now partnered with Masterclass Foundation to scale up the program. And then we have incubated over 14,000 individuals. We have given them access to business development. We love to pride ourselves. The photo you are seeing there, it's the head of state, that's our Kenyan president, who is so much our champion and who so much every year we invite him to come and graduate the classes. And we are happy to say that we have very good support with government because we work well with government. But very, very quickly, maybe in the next, I guess I have less than 5 minutes, really look at our success stories, hydroponic farming, and we are glad that in the earlier session we were well represented by Elizabeth Okulu on hydroponic farming. Once again, now we are looking at Michael. Michael was one of our beneficiaries since 2018. He went through the program, the training, stage 2, we helped him. We gave him access to finance. He built, we helped him build a greenhouse and, of course, grow the tomatoes you are seeing. And because we are doing this scientifically, you can clearly see that this tomato is a very healthy tomato. And it is very predictable because hydroponic farming is so much a scientific way of growing food without soil, using science, but we know the safety. And we are happy to say that we have a market for Michael. And this is where, with the loan that we have given him, Michael is able to repay his loan and is able to take home some cash. The loans for greenhouses, ordinarily, a greenhouse like this with tomatoes, 12 months he's able to repay the loan. And the second year now he's able to start growing his business. The next slide is, once again, here we were showcasing our hydroponic science, farm to the president of the country. You see that's our president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and our CEO, group CEO, Joshua, and the rest are our beneficiaries, and our Minister for Youth in Kenya are just walking them through what it is that we are doing with the young people. And the next slide, a slide I love to show, the young people who have finally graduated, and we have taken them through the learning process. That's their greenhouse. And you can clearly see that vegetable, that's lettuce. And you can clearly see that it's very healthy, and it is healthy because, once again, it's scientifically done. Next slide. Next slide is where we are now talking of beauty. And in beauty, what it is we have also done is to do the franchising model. We have franchised there. We have partnered with Ashley's. And franchising for us, if it succeeds, is a great way of scaling and sustaining. Right there, we are showcasing Juliana. We gave her a loan of 5.9 million after she cleared her, stage 1 of the program. She's able to do, revenues of 800,000 a month, and she's able to repay her loan. Construction, once again, that's one of our beneficiaries who's also thriving very much in construction. And we're happy to say that it's not just the men, but we also have ladies. If you go to the next slide, we've taken them through the training. But the good thing, this was a partnership we did with GIZ. After they cleared the training, they graduated with the tools of trade. That was a grant given by GIZ, a great, we are happy to say that we've had great partners. Automotive engineering, that's also part of, that story of Peter Kanye, who is also doing very well. And has been able, to open up his garage and to be able to fix vehicles and to take a loan and repay the loan. Once again, the next slide shows us manufacturing. And in manufacturing, a partnership that now we have gotten into with the Mastercard Foundation, and we are manufacturing our own greenhouses, really saying that we do not want to do imports. We want to try as much as possible to do, to manufacture our own greenhouses and create jobs for the young people. And right there, that's in partnership with Gearbox, one of our trainers. And in the next slide, it is so much the scaling up of the program, where we have partnered with Mastercard Foundation, as I have just said. For 5 years, we are glad to say that they gave us $125 million to create 1.5 million jobs in the next 5 years. And it's through, all the 3 steps of the program that we've spoken about. And the next slide showcases the work that we are doing in Rwanda. We have started small in Rwanda because we are saying we want to take all the lessons we have learned from Kenya, because if we perfect that, it becomes very easy to do all this. But we are happy to say, and in the earlier session, we did showcase Jeanette from Rwanda, one of our beneficiaries of Ijire in Rwanda. And really, the rest are just photos and our good stories. And thank you so much. I think we are so much ready to answer any questions. That's been our journey.
I know we rushed you through that a little bit. So I think something you said this morning, and I know Joshua always say that, is that the future belongs to the doers. So for me, we've got some Q&As that we want to bring up. Can we bring them up on the screen?
Sure, please.
Oh,
yes,
now I
please.
have to. Can you read the question, because my eyes are so bad, Immaculata? Over to you.
Okay, Jane, thank you for sharing your beautiful case study and the phenomenal results you've achieved. So, yeah, great insights. I've got some resources for university degrees. Can KCB help us to get the program accreditation through the UN so young Africans can have free university education? I think that's one of the questions, Jane.
Yeah. Okay, you want me to answer one by one?
No, what we're going to do, Jane, we'll choose some of them. So if you can answer the first one, what Immaculata was saying. Somebody's asking about free education, but
and accreditation.
And accreditation, but I'm not 100% sure if that's something that we want to discuss at this, at this time. So next question.
There's another question around how many years does KCB take to support the entrepreneurs through this process?
That's it. Can you answer that one for us, Jane?
Yeah. Ordinarily, we take about 12 to 36 months. Now with Mastercard, actually, we are doing it up to 60 months. And it all depends on the loan. If you've given you a loan for 12 months or 60 months, we want to incubate you during that period of the loan. But even beyond the loan, there are still those people that have not taken any loan and they need that incubation, they need the trio, they need the legal services. So we do, it's between 12 to 36 or to 60 months.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So Jane, I've got another question for you, because I think when we look at this from a shared value perspective, and I think people always say, how does it close the loop? So KCB started with an initiative. They identified a social issue, which is that young people didn't have jobs. So what they did is they came up with an initiative, and the loop closes itself when that young entrepreneur gets trained and he gets empowered and he goes back into the banking system. So that's the shared value loop when you look at it. Now you've got a really big target ahead of you with Mastercard on how, I think you said 5 million or 1 million jobs or in 5 years.
1.5.
Yeah. So are you gonna scale it across other countries, or what is the plan for it?
Yes, definitely. We do intend. I know with Mastercard, what we have signed is just for Kenya. But since we are already doing the work in other countries, we are already speaking to other donors to see if they will come and help us scale in other countries. Like if you look at the work we have done in Rwanda, and you look at a young lady like Jeanette. That was with us this morning. Started small, but I remember last year around November visiting her business and very, very impressed that she's been able to. And so we do really intend to scale up, because the need is the same. The need in Uganda and Tanzania and Kenya and Rwanda and Ghana is the same. The need is the same in Africa. So this model, we want to take it across the continent.
I'm very happy to hear that, because as you just said, the need is our young people need it. They really do. And with that, Jane, I want to thank you for your time. And I want to thank you for being the powerhouse behind the 2GRDIRI, initiative for KCB. And thank you very much for being part of our masterclass this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great sharing with you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jane. And now we're going to ask our technical team to bring up our poll first, please. Can we do that?
Yes.
Okay, we're just waiting for the poll to start. Okay, over to you, Immaculata.
What we'd like to know from the audience, I think we've spent some time looking at the shared value framework, the importance of purpose and the SDGs, as well as the framework, and how through the framework you can actually start creating shared value through the products, the value chain, etc. And now we'd like to know, can all companies, regardless of what product or service they offer, create shared value? There's been a lot of controversy and debate around companies that would qualify to be shared value companies versus not. So please answer yes, no, or not sure.
And I do hope that more people will answer it so that it's not just Immaculata myself sitting here, hey? We really want people to answer it.
I must say it's been quite a challenge doing this virtually, but I think that we've had to adapt to the change, and so far so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got a few minutes or seconds, I think, to get the feedback on the poll. So can shared value company, or can companies, in fact, regardless of what product or service you're in, create shared value?
And while we're waiting for you to answer that, I just want to add a little bit to today, is that this is really what we've given you today is a really, really broad overview of what shared value is about, because there's so much more involved in it. And the thing is, you can't in this short time try and sort of land it show it to you, make sure that you understand it completely, and then hope that you're going to go tomorrow and implement it within your organization. So I think for me, and now it's an opportunity, and I know, Immaculata, you were going to mention it, but I'm going to mention it. We've got in August this year with the Strathmore Business School, we are delivering a 3-day shared value course, which I can say is Harvard aligned. So we've looked at what Mark and them do at Harvard, and then we've localized it for our continent. And I really think it would be really, really awesome if some of you, if you're really interested in becoming a shared value advocate and you're thinking of moving strategy as well, really, really great for you to try and attend that in August. And now we're going to have to do it virtually.
Yeah.
Because before we were going to deliver it in March, and then we had to, obviously COVID-19 came and we had to change all of those plans. Over to you, Immaculata.
Well, the results of the poll are quite resoundingly yes. All companies, regardless of the service or the product they sell, can create shared value. That's very encouraging.
It is very encouraging.
What about the controversy, Tiki, around there's been certain social ills, I think, that is a result of some of the, I guess, unintended consequences of business and trading. We've had oil spillages. We've got global obesity challenges. I know that we've had a period of lockdown in South Africa where many people were up in arms that they can't have their occasional drink. But we also know in the background that gender-based violence has predominantly been driven by the consumption of alcohol. So how does a company create shared value if that's the product or service you offer?
I think when you look at something like alcohol, it's always been a very topical discussion, because often people said, and I think it was from a banking industry, it was PNP Paribas that earlier on this year actually announced that they will not be funding any coal mines anymore. So there is this, you've got to, there's this social, because if you look at coal mines, let's look at our country though, is that there's so many coal mines in our country, and it provides so many jobs.
Employment, absolutely.
So if you close those coal mines, the social issues, the ripple effect of that, like with COVID-19 now, is enormous.
Yeah.
So the thing is, how do we do it from a business perspective? If every single company can do it, and let's look at alcohol as well.
Yeah.
Is what are we doing? But then we had the discussion yesterday with the sorghum farmers that I think it was East African breweries have started this whole new farming community that provides their sorghum. So there's the personal purpose, social issue that comes up with something like that. But I'm really glad that everybody thinks that we can all create shared value, because even organizations like from an alcohol perspective or from a, one of those other social ills, can actually create
and
shared
quite
value.
encouraging, in fact, when you look at the framework and the first pillar of creating shared value, that some companies have actually gone to the extent of producing zero-based alcohol products.
Yep.
Which talks to the fact that there's an awareness of what needs to be happening in creating shared value, particularly as it's guided by the SDGs. Okay. I think now would be a good time to discuss purpose.
Yep. We haven't had, so we've had our poll, so now over to purpose. And over to you.
Purpose. Can we have the slides up, please? Okay. Right. Yeah. So.
Do you have to tell this? Oh. Okay.
There's a lot of research that's been done on purpose, and I think what's interesting and thematically coming through in all this work is that it's thematically aligned with the work of Professor Kramer and Michael Porter on shared value. What's on screen now is what the Reputation Institute has done. They run an annual survey to look at the reputation of leaders, the reputation of countries, the reputation of businesses. And they assert that we are living in a reputation economy where forces beyond just profits matter now more than ever. And I think throughout the 2 days of the summit and throughout the discussions we've had so far, one can see that underlying the success of every business, aligned with government and society, is a purpose. There's a study that was done recently among 200 CEOs, and they were asked to rank the top 10 things that as leaders they would have to keep in mind on their radar, both at a strategy and implementation level for the success of their businesses. And it's no surprise that higher purpose was rated as the top most critical thing to consider. And what these CEOs are saying is that companies need to deliver on a corporate brand purpose and embrace cultural values at an emotional level that transcends the products and the services. In fact, suggesting that profit and purpose now coexist, they're not mutually exclusive. Some of the things that are emerging are sitting in our sustainable development goals, once again affirming that there isn't a shortage of what companies can do to define their purpose. CEO activism came up as number 9. And we know recently that with all the violence that's been happening around the globe, there was a very unpopular post that was put up by President Donald Trump. And the CEO of Facebook was under fire from his own employees for not speaking up around racism and violence that was happening through their platform. So CEOs are also standing out outside of what the bottom line is about and return to the shareholders to speak about purpose and to stand for something. Diversity and inclusion, another critical SDG that we need to be relating to, but top of the charts, the CEOs are saying purpose and higher purpose is absolutely crucial. How does the Reputation Institute define purpose? And just see how it links back to the definition we saw earlier on by Porter and Kramer. Higher purpose is defined as the principles of why the company exists. So again, shared value speaks to the how, but purpose speaks to the why. To fulfill a higher purpose beyond profits and to operate according to an elevated level of moral principles. This challenges every fiber of the organization. Interestingly, in the same study, when asked whether the CEOs that were surveyed across Latin America, EMEA, and across the globe, the 50% of the CEOs were saying the decisions that they make on a day-to-day basis aren't truly reflecting their business purpose, and that they would go back and review how it is that their strategic and operational decision. But the recognition that higher purpose is crucial at this point in time in their businesses was highlighted as being at the very top. The Reputation Institute also releases a study of companies that are most admired for being exemplary in living the values of a good reputation, which comprises of drivers of reputation, ranging from citizenship, so what has the company done for society lately, leadership, products and services, performance, innovation. And there we go. Some of the companies that we spoke about earlier also once again being highlighted in the study as driving purpose through the work that they do every day. In the same similar reputation study, 181 CEOs signed a pledge with a purpose statement. So once again, you're seeing CEOs taking a little bit of a step back on reflection, looking at their companies, their performance, return to shareholders, and talking about why do we exist? What purpose do we serve? How sustainable is society as a result of the work that we do? And they're all signing a pledge where they're saying, we commit to delivering value to the customer. We spoke about society on the definition of our shared value from Porter and Kramer. Investing in the employee, who's the advocate of the product we sell. Dealing fairly and ethically with suppliers. This links back to the supply chain pillar of the framework for shared value. Supporting the communities in which the companies work. And generating long-term value for shareholders. Everybody that spoke about shared value said it's not a quick fix. It's not a destination, it's a journey. And returning value to the shareholders who provide the capital that allows companies to invest, grow, and innovate. Whether or not with a mirror view these companies are delivering on this promise is neither here nor there, because every single company is uniquely on their own shared value journey. However, the fact that there is a commitment at this level by CEOs recognizing purpose as being just beyond some intention on a piece of paper or a plug on a wall is quite critical for how the shared value journey is driven. A different study by Cohen, Potter, Novelli on purpose that was run in 2018. An interesting definition again that has a common thread of how it is that purpose defines and charters the North Star for organizations. Purpose isn't just a marketing buzzword. Businesses are changing how they operate and what they stand for to have an authentic, more impactful role in society. Purpose is more than just a mission statement or a commitment of values. It defines an organization's value in society, which allows it to simultaneously grow its business and positively impact the world. What's going to impact the world? The 17 SDGs that we spoke about. World hunger, education, inequality, climate change. Purpose must be deeply embedded within the organization, the brand, and the experience that is delivered. How do people react to organizations that have defined a purpose and are living the purpose through what they communicate, to the products that they sell, to how they treat their customers, and how they deliver value to society? The same study suggests that 79% of customers that were surveyed are saying, we would be loyal to a company if it was purpose-led. 70% say they would be proud to be associated with a company. And another 67% says, we believe that the purpose-driven company isn't just taking care of the products or collecting the premium. They care about the well-being of my family. And furthermore to that, there's statistics that suggest that the same audience would invest in a purpose-led company, would even work for it. And they'd say they would actually be advocates of that company through the products and services that they do and defend it in an instance that it made a misstep. So all research shows and suggests that being purpose-led as an organization is a long-term strategy that sustains not only the organization and its profitability, but also communities within which these organizations operate. So what happens if you don't have a purpose? Where do you start? Well, first of all, we've spoken about the SDGs. There's 17 challenges that we have globally that we could be solving right now. And the 17th SDG talks about partnerships in making sure that the SDGs happen. So there'll never be a shortage of a business challenge to solve with the SDGs as a guideline. So if you don't have a purpose as an organization, there's always a reflection on the current products and services that you offer, the impact they have on your customers, on your employees, and on society, to go back and try to find a purpose that can pivot around what springs everybody to action to rally around the organization. The Shared Value Playbook, which has been released yesterday and will be launched at this e-summit tomorrow, also has given a definition of purpose, which rallies around this idea that a company's reason for being that simultaneously helps to solve a societal problem and creates significant financial value to the company. We've spoken about shared value organizations. We've spoken about how resilient they are, particularly at this time of COVID. And through all the research that's been done, whether it's the Reputation Institute, whether it's Kantar, whether it's FSG and the Shared Value Initiative, we have seen through a few cases, we've seen through the KCB case, the resilience of organizations that exist to solve a problem that exists in society and how sustainable they are long-term for the benefit of all. Mark also spoke in the opening remarks of the e-summit on Tuesday when the session opened up to say, purpose has got to be significant, it has to be authentic, it has to be profitable, and critically, it has to be serious. So there's a guideline in the playbook that says, if you didn't know where to start, this is a good guide to go back to your purpose. Does your purpose permeate the entire organization to the point where from the lowest level of employee to the highest level, bottom up or top down, there is a single definition of purpose that is lived through the culture of the organization, through the policies of the organization. Is it serious? Is it profitable? Does it promote fair practice to clients, to suppliers, to the entire value chain? And this guidance that has been given and unleashed through the Purpose Playbook taps again into the guidelines that organizations can look at in defining what their purpose should be. There's an audio that was picked from Mark Kramer's opening remarks. It's got a little bit of a glitch towards the end because when he speaks about purpose, I think something happened there. Siri picked up purpose and said something else. Nevertheless, I think that Mark speaks about a superficiality that organizations can no longer hide behind glossy reports and sustainability reports that talk about the good that companies are doing without being held accountable for the work that they're doing. Purpose is what defines, what sets purpose-driven organizations apart from the ones that don't have. Can we play the audio?
Idea that capitalism can take care of itself without the support and the regulation of government has clearly, I think, been refuted. You know, we have lived in a world that has tolerated superficiality. It has enabled us to publish glossy sustainability reports, to claim that we are pursuing the Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations developed, to fill out endless checklists about ESG performance and criteria, and to begin to believe that that was enough. Well, I think it is clear that these things are not enough. That to build a resilient economy and society to respond to this crisis, we actually need to change how we operate our business. These superficial promises and slogans and publications are not sufficient. So the question is, how can we pivot? How can we rebuild not the society and economy that we had before this crisis, but one that is truly resilient, truly equitable, sustainable, and even more profitable than the world that we have been living in. And we believe that embracing a purpose,
the Purpose Playbook,
and creating shared value is central to making that pivot to a more successful society.
So how can organizations pivot? Purpose is the only moral compass that can guide exactly how they do that. Let's look at some purpose statements. How serious and how authentic and how profitable are they? Nike has got a purpose: to use the power of sport to move the world forward. And over, we have seen how Nike has been able to do that. Is this purpose serious enough? Is it authentic? Is it profitable? Is it addressing a fundamental problem around the globe that society can rally around? The power of sport has been the universal thread that holds the world together, regardless of race, regardless of age, of creed. We've had World Cups around the globe where on stage, every single podium has been occupied by people from the most unexpected spaces. And Nike's purpose is to perpetuate that happens for every single athlete across the globe. Google. I don't know how we would be literally and figuratively navigating the world without Google. Their purpose is quite clear: to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Open source, Google Maps, Google Scholar. Every single thing that we do or are unsure about even, we Google. Is it a profitable purpose? Absolutely. The data they're mining in the background to be able to make their services profitable is clear to all of us. They have defined their purpose as an open source where we're all across the globe, wherever we may be, are able to tap into the power of their data and analytics to access the information that we need. Discovery, making people healthier, enhancing and protecting their lives. I am biased about Discovery's purpose because it has stood the test of time, particularly now at this time of COVID-19. How does Discovery transcend providing comfort and safety to their members, but to the society at large through the power of Vitality? 20 million Vitality members later, living a life of healthy choices and being profitable and productive back in society. We know that through this purpose, Discovery is able to tap into the world and its markets that they export Vitality to live to this purpose of making people healthier. From how people drive to how people bank, this purpose has seen them through in excess of 25 years of existence. Nestle, another interesting case. Their purpose is enhancing the quality of life and contributing to a healthier society. And whether it's their range of milk products for babies to the products we consume as adults, Nestle has stood true to their purpose of enhancing nutrition and the quality of life through the products that come off their production line. In fact, they've got a factory in the Eastern Cape, is one of the cases that they put forward, that recycles water to the point where they don't rely on municipal resources to produce their products in their Eastern Cape plant. Talking to sustainability and how committed they are to the cause of this purpose. Safaricom, we spoke about them earlier, and how they have used their M-Pesa product to ensure that transactions across Africa are enabled from wherever in the part of the world that you are. And with COVID-19, the fact that they've zero-rated all M-Pesa transactions, as well as increased the bandwidth of small businesses and households, and universities as well, speaks to how they're working every day to transform lives. So, as a reflection and a point in time on what truly makes for an authentic purpose, it's got to be serious, it's got to generate profit, it's got to be sustainable. It's got to be the reason the people that work for your organization to provide that service or that product can rally around it, because every single thing that they do makes a difference in the world and in the lives of the society, particularly the communities where these companies or where our companies operate. During the opening session of our e-summit, there was a CEO lunch. And interestingly and anecdotally, some of them had very interesting things to say about purpose. Some of it very deep and really touching the heart around how they're all applying their minds at this very uncertain time to drive their organizations through purpose. Here's some of what they said. Ifeniwa, who's the CEO of Tony Elumelu, said, "Purpose is about leaving the world better than you found it." How true is it of all the SDGs? Just a moment of reflection. Leaving the world better than you found it. Stephen, who's the CEO of the Private Sector Federation in Rwanda, said, "Purpose is about doing unto others what you'd like done to you." So as you're sitting on that hot seat of a CEO, as you're sitting on that hot seat of being an executive, as you're sitting in that hot seat of an organization that makes policy, as you're sitting in that hot seat of a government organization that's about to review that white paper, how are you looking through it with the lens of doing unto others what you'd like done to you? Those policies, nevertheless, will do a round robin and impact all of us that put them in place in the first place. So Stephen is saying, purpose is about doing unto others what you'd like done to you. Hilton Kalner, the CEO of Discovery South Africa, said, "Never before, particularly in these COVID times, has our purpose of being making people healthier, enhancing and protecting their lives being as important as this. Every single touch point, from staff to employees to how, as an essential service, Discovery has had to come through to provide safety and comfort at the most uncertain time, had to be true and resonate with this purpose that was set so many years ago. Rebecca Miano, who's the CEO of Kengen in Kenya, said, "We had to drive our purpose through our employees in time. Instead of the leadership speaking about purpose, our own employees started speaking about our purpose to each other." These are narratives that touch the core of how organizations are starting to pivot towards using purpose as their North Star for the organizational decisions that they make strategically and, of course, in their operations. Lots of work being done by Kantar at this point in time, COVID time, but also just in general research. And they again putting another lens of purpose through the challenges of COVID and saying, while some brands are trying to figure it out, if purpose is just fluffy marketing, brands with a purpose are growing. And 80% of overperforming companies link purpose to absolutely everything that they do. So again, if where do I start happens to be lingering in some of your thoughts and in your thinking, Kantar also took the Maslow hierarchy of needs and plotted, based on the research they conducted recently, where consumers are finding essential services as driving their everyday purchase decisions, particularly in this time of uncertainty. As you go up the need for esteem and self-actualization, perhaps some of these products, like luxury goods, are not as important, but at a fundamental basic level, medical insurance, medicine, clothing, epidemic prevention, financial management, telecommunication, connectivity. We've had a few challenges and glitches on technology as this e-summit was unfolding. The need for telcos, like a Liquid Telecom who wants to connect all of Africa, becomes those critical, essential, purpose-driven initiatives that companies can pursue. So opportunities are endless in this space, and again, as it relates to the SDGs and the framework that's been provided. Water is a human and business priority. Where do I start? There's a point in time and an opportunity to address water shortage around the globe and our consumption of it. Climate change, we've given a lot of examples on climate change and what companies have done, including launching credit cards by the economy that starts to measure and limit carbon emissions at a consumption level. This is a sum of the parts of Africa as a continent. It represents the colorful, powerful narrative that is starting to emerge as the Shared Value Africa Initiative converges these gatherings year on year to get young entrepreneurs, to get leaders, to get government, to get employees of organizations all rallying around the idea of shared value and how we can create it. In Mark's opening remarks, he spoke about Africa showing the world how it should be done. Take a look at the magic that resides within Angola. Take a look at the magic that resides within South Africa, where people are planting trees that emit carbon emissions, over 1 million trees being planted by 2030. Take a look at Ghana, which is the second largest producer of cocoa after Ivory Coast. Lots happening in African countries that if you unpack every single one of these 54 countries and what they do, could tell a beautiful shared value story. And as we wrap the masterclass today, remembering that Africa as a continent, we depend on each other, We have incredible resources. We have enough muscle to pull together as a continent to drive shared value in our own neighborhoods, in our own organizations, in our own countries, but as a unified continent to show the world what the true meaning and definition of shared value is through our actions. I'd like to wrap up with a video that sums up the story of Africa.
Them got me chinyanja bapana bakepa beating down in yamo kuteka rap on it down in yamo beba bari kuama ni yamo kumeka maheta kupaka pena mo mega bari bakepa ni yamo teka shelela pa beating go shelela pa beating go shelela ona skile ona skile
Selanya menedi hangiri ni na family standing bambiri mo kantiri vikari njise afuna ni mutambire mukabede Pama beating she lela Pama beating she lela Pama beating she lela Pama beating she.
That's all we had for this afternoon's masterclass. Can we have Tiki back on screen, please?
Thank you. I'm here.
Awesome.
So Immaculata, thank you very much for that. And just in about that video that just played now, before we go to Q&A, is the fact that we want everybody to come back to Africa, because this is the place to be, and this is where the future lies. It lies in Africa.
Home is where the heart is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So we're going to go to some Q&A, and I think I can ask you to answer the first one. So what is the very first step for companies to become shared value practitioners? Where does one start from a shared value perspective? So if you want to take that for us.
I think there's a number of things to consider. What I think we've had through a number of master classes and in discussion has been somewhere in an organization, there's a department who's been tasked with defining the sustainability strategy and carving forward where the business should be going. And it kind of only rests and ends with the CSI efforts. Mm-hmm. Shared value is a strategy that is fundamental to the success of an organization and certainly must be driven from the top. So if anybody is on this masterclass or has been engaged in shared value or would like to start the journey, the first thing to do is to perhaps have a conversation with your CEO to see how the moral campus of what drives the purpose of an organization can come alive. And of course, in an Africa context, Tiki's office at the Shared Value Africa Initiative is a good place to start. There's a purpose playbook that's been unveiled to help organizations that haven't got a purpose to start from scratch defining what that purpose looks like. There's SDGs that guide exactly which business challenge you should be tackling. As an NGO, as an NPO, perhaps you're not a big corporate that can scale up the impact of shared value as we've discussed earlier. But the partnerships of the work that you do and how it ties in with what big corporates do is a good place to start as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and one of the other questions was saying that our organization focuses on corporate social investment. So does that mean we have to move to shared value? And I just want to say to everybody out there is that, and we often get this because, specifically when you're part of an NGO or an NPO, people are scared, are sort of, they're a little bit scared that shared value is going to take the place of that. No, not at all. Because when you look at corporate social investment, and this is what Michael Porter and Mark Kramer always say and what we advocate as well, shared value is all inclusive. Yeah. There's a space for everybody in the shared value model, in the shared value concept. So if your organization is doing corporate social investment, they have to continue with that corporate social investment.
It's important.
Because we're talking shared value here, and shared value is about creating economic value and value for society. So it is about profit with purpose. And that's why, you know, when you were talking about purpose, it is the start. That's the very first start where you have to start as an organization. You've got to start with your purpose. So you don't give up your corporate social investment side. You actually, becomes part of the overall strategy and the overall focus from an organization perspective. Because you find the social issue, you build the business case around it, you do your research and you implement it and you scale. And when you scale, who do you need? You need your NGOs and your NPOs in order to be able to scale.
I think also we can't underestimate the idea of inclusivity in all of this and conversation. Because once again, you know, some organizations might be tempted to get a group of people together to say, let's sit around the table and come up with a purpose. I think what makes for an authentic purpose has to filter down to how the culture of the organization permeates through everything that's absolutely done. So inclusivity is also talking about not only who's around the table to have the conversation, but who has a voice. Because the purpose has to be lived by when the employee leaves the building and finds themselves engaging with their friends at a braai, or finds themselves in the heart of a conflict at a customer cold-facing space, that purpose must shine through. So purpose is not exclusive to the executive of the organization. Conversations have to happen that help define what drives that organization at a purpose level.
I think one of the conversations that we had, and I think when you engage, or when you as an organization, and you look at Discovery, for instance, if you as an organization decide to look at moving your strategy to one of shared value, corporate social responsibility is very much part of that. CSI is very much part of that, because when we look at corporate social responsibility and you look at what happened with COVID-19, you know, we often sat around the table during COVID-19 to say, fine, you know, are we talking specifically, because people were asking us, are we talking corporate social investment? Are we talking corporate social responsibility, or are we talking shared value? You know, the model for shared value is always, and that's what we say, without a doubt, organizations have to be sustainable. So they have to make money. They have to be profitable, because they have to pay their salaries, they've got to pay their taxes, you know, they've got all of these government regulated, you know, entities that they need to adhere to. So that is your corporate social responsibility. That's your license to operate. So you get a license to operate. You adhere to everything around that, and that's corporate social responsibility. When we look at shared value, we look at shared value as to how you take your core business and you address a social issue, or you look at a social issue that is affecting your business. That's what you have to do. What is holding my business back? This is what Mark Kramer always say, and I remember when we were in Kenya last year with the late Bob Collymore, is what is holding your business back? You know, is it the fact that your transport system isn't working properly? You know, or the roads where you have to go and do your deliveries is really not great. So what can you do from a social aspect perspective that is going to help you to actually become more productive if you fix the road, you know, to your customers? That you know, so there's all of those things that you need to look at, and that's why we're saying shared value is not this model that you can plug into, because you have to be creative around it, and you've got to look at your own organization. What are you doing from an organizational perspective? What are the systems that you have in place? You know, how do you treat your employees? You know, your biggest asset. That's what we've seen during COVID-19. Your employees are your biggest asset. And if you don't look after your biggest asset, we saw, you know, what happened. So we're almost out of time.
Let's see if we can take one more question.
If I believe in shared value, how do I get buy-in? What challenges could I face if I believe in shared value? I think from the challenges from an organizational perspective. What do you think the challenges are? If you want to go to the boss and say, listen, we need to move to shared value.
Well, a good start would be to tell your immediate boss that you attended an e-summit that blew you away. But honestly, I think that I can imagine just being the lonely voice in the room on a concept or a philosophy you've heard about that you want to spring into action and make it happen, and yet you're not being heard or you don't even have a voice. Find someone in the organization, I think, that's willing to listen. A lot of good is happening through organizations, even at a level of philanthropy, if I may add. CSI then took philanthropy to the next level, and therefore shared value is the one vehicle through which scalability can be achieved. So if you're feeling lonely and scared, just have conversations, coffee table conversations with your colleagues and friends. And it's amazing how one conversation can just gather momentum.
Absolutely.
Just speaking to your peers and your colleagues, and perhaps you even write a proposal or an email to your boss. I think that the urgency and criticality of this strategy, particularly now, I don't think you'd find yourself a lonely voice, just given the impact. I mean, is your organization profitable? Do people sit around the table to talk about what propels them in one direction based on a central purpose? And I think those are all the questions that if you ask yourself and you see that they're not happening in your organization, could spark a very good fire.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're running out of time. Immaculata, thank you so much. As always,
it's a marathon. It is a marathon session.
So in closing, I just want to share something with all of you out there. So, Fortune has got this top 50 companies changing the world awards.
Yeah.
I mean, Discovery was one of them a couple of years ago. I think they've been there more than once, actually.
Yeah.
So those entries have opened, but there's not a lot of time. I think they close on the 22nd of June. Then I also want to say, if you work within an organization, and what we're saying is that we don't always recognize what we're doing as shared value.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that we've realized in the last 3 years, that we've been operating, is that you don't recognize it, and sometimes have a look at what you're doing from that perspective, because we're looking for shared value entries to the Shared Value Awards, which this year is going to be totally free. So you'll be able to enter the Shared Value Awards for free, and it's courtesy of the Lurie Awards. Thank you, Rajesh. And then in August, again, as I said, we've got the three-day course, which I think is a really great opportunity if you want to really entrench yourself and get to know the concept. And then tomorrow, as you mentioned, we've got the Purpose Playbook. So we're launching the Purpose Playbook in Africa. And people have always come to us, and so you've heard about the shared value now. So how do we implement it within an organization? And that's what we say. The Purpose Playbook is the how for us.
Yeah.
But as its name says, it starts with purpose. So tomorrow's program is also really going to be great. We've got a morning of innovation. I mean, we're going to talk innovation, which is so much part of shared value.
Yeah.
And I just want to close off by saying thank you very much again to KCB, to Joshua, to Judith, to Jane for making today, enabling us to deliver today, and to our other sponsors, Old Mutual and Abbott, that was part of us on the day before, and yesterday was Abbott. So please join us tomorrow, and thank you very, very much for being part of our first ever virtual summit and the first ever Shared Value Virtual Summit, and we're doing it in Africa first. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And with that, over and out.